Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our offices here at MS Amlin. My name is Vishal Desai. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure to meet, I am the Chief Risk Officer and one of the Board of Directors members here at MS Amlin. I've been involved with Dive-In for well over 10 years. This is the 10th anniversary of the festival. And what I can say is at the start of that journey, it would not have been a room this full for an event of this nature. So it just goes to show what progress we've made in those 10 years. I've just been told by one of the founding members of Dive-In, Jason Groves, who kindly joined us here, that this year we are close to 40,000 attendees for Dive-In, which is just fantastic. And welcome also to our lovely guests who are joining us online, haven't been able to join us here in person. I am not going to stand in the way too much longer from those who you've actually come here to hear from, our lovely panelists. But given this is a topic on neurodiversity, we're just very mindful that there are some extra sort of housekeeping matters that it's important for us to go through to make sure everyone feels included, respected, and welcomed. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Jonathan Hescott, who joins us from GAIN, the Group for Autism, Insurance, Investment, and Neurodiversity. So my very warm welcome to Jonathan as well.
Morning, everyone. Morning, everyone in the room. Morning, everyone watching. So just a couple of housekeeping points. We really want to make this as inclusive and safe space as possible. So I'll rattle off the points we have. The event is being recorded. The microphones in the ceiling are capable of picking up comments and questions from the audience, but the audience won't be on video. The video is pure of our panelists. We do have a professional photographer in the room, and photos could be used for future Dive-In events, marketing them. So if you'd like to say anonymous, we will have the opportunity to pose questions anonymously via Slido. We have a QR code coming up in the link. Please feel free to do that at any time. We'll feed your questions to our panel. For anyone in the room who might prefer a quiet space, we do have some designated quiet rooms here. Let any of the ushers know. They're behind us. They're nice quiet spaces that the event is being fed into it as well live. If you're struggling at any time, just contact one of the ushers and they'll take you there. Last point, we're not expecting any fire drills today or any fire alarm tests. So if the fire alarm does go off, then listen for further instructions. And lastly, we really hope you'll join us for a bit of networking after the event for another hour or so. Sorry, people watching, that's purely related to the room. So thanks for joining us today. Hope you have a really great event. I'm going to hand over now to our facilitator from GAIN, Vic Mazonas.
Thank you, Frank. So thank you very much. I'm Vic Mazonas. I'm the General Manager at GAIN, although as I say, every time I talk to people about the company, the job titles really mean very little. We're a small organisation, so we all do a bit of everything. My pronouns are they, them. And before I get started talking to our panelists, I just want to let you all know that by the end of the session, you should be able to describe the barriers that neurodivergent individuals can experience in the workplace, identify the approaches for overcoming those barriers, either for yourself or to support others, and specify one action you will take to improve neurodiversity inclusion within your organisation. So, we've got some wonderful panelists with us today. We've got Johnny Timpson online, we've got Jen Williams, we've got Donna, and we've got Nalini as well. So to start with, why don't you each take just a couple of moments? Actually, we'll start with you, Jen. Would you introduce yourself to the audience, tell a bit about yourself and why you're here?
Sure. Jennifer Williams, she, her pronoun. I work for Marsh McLennan as their Senior Diversity and Inclusion Specialist. I joined them back in 2021 on their graduate scheme in their real estate insurance broking specialty practice, and through various means and machinations that I do fairly ascribe to my ADHD, got myself into the role I'm currently in. I was diagnosed with ADHD during my time on their graduate scheme, and I'm peer-reviewed for autism, but I received my later life diagnosis during my time on the graduate scheme, so I'll talk a bit about that in terms of early careers, navigating neurodiversity, from the lived experience side, but also from the work that we've been able to do with Marsh McLennan with Ambitious About Autism. Donna's joining us from there, so she can talk more about that. But we've come to the end of a 4-year partnership with them and had some incredible takeaways. So we're hoping to kind of knowledge share on that front as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Nalini, would you like to let us know about yourself and why you're here today?
Hi, so I'm Nalini. I've been driving the agenda on neuro inclusion for the last 4 years or so within primarily the asset management sector, where I'm also a SteerCo member of the Diversity Project and co-chair of the Neurodiversity Network there. I'm also a member of the Access to Insurance Working Group. And I was diagnosed with ADHD in 2020 after being misdiagnosed 4 times over 12 years. And it made me realise why my own career has been full of speed bumps. And that then led me to create the investment sector's first work experience programme, which was aimed at neurodivergent young adults, so that others like myself don't have to face the same invisible barriers that I have with access to career and progression opportunities. Thank you.
Donna, we've already heard a little bit about Ambitious, but I'd love to hear more about it.
And so I'm Donna Lawson. I have worked within social mobility for over 15 years now, both within the not-for-profit and the private sector. My background predominantly is in leading the design, the development and the delivery of inclusion programmes, predominantly for those who face multiple barriers to employment. I now work for Ambitious About Autism as the Deputy Director of National Services, and that is basically around our national provision and national programmes available to autistic children and young people, and providing them with the opportunities to thrive and overcoming some of those barriers and speed bumps and looking at how can we tackle them on a systemic level. I have a neurodivergent family, as well as physical disabilities as well within my family. So I'm very passionate about improving access and just opportunities for a range of groups. And today we're going to talk about neurodiversity.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Johnny, joining us online, I'd love to hear a bit about introducing yourself. And why don't you also lead into telling everyone a little bit about what drew you to the insurance industry and how you got your career going?
Well, thank you, Vic. Well, good morning, everybody, and greetings from Coventry. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person in London today, but I'm working with a number of universities and government on vulnerability and scams. But it's great to join you today. I'm Johnny Timpson. I've got a musculoskeletal disability, and I'm also autistic. I was formerly the government's, well, I was actually the inaugural government disability and access ambassador for the insurance industry profession, and I set up the Access to Insurance Working Group that Nalini alluded to. But I was also working across the sector, gathering colleague feedback to inform the government's developing disability strategy, and I was particularly looking for areas where the industry was really not meeting the needs of people either entering the industry or joining the industry, or had partners or children that had disabilities or limiting health conditions. And the largest area of unmet need was neurodiversity, and that's why with Laurie Edmonds and Barbara Schonhofer, I established GAIN, the Group for Autism Insurance Investment and Neurodiversity. In addition to that, I also sit on the board of Caldwell's Children, which is the disability charity for children and young people, predominantly children and young people that are autistic or have got ADHD. I a number of other charity advisory roles. My day job, I chair military insurer, Absolute Military. I chair financial vulnerability, all sector financial vulnerability tech, Morgan Ash. So what drew me to insurance? Well, I'm probably one of the few people you've ever met that really always wanted to be in insurance. My father was in the insurance industry, so from a toddler knee-high, I was working and doing summer jobs in Prudential and Commercial Union and other big insurance brands of old. I had aspirations at one point to be a medical doctor. I didn't get the grades, so I thought I'd be a financial doctor as well and focus on insurance. And I guess what really drew me to some of they drew me to to really start to focus on autism is that, I'm now in my early 60s. I wasn't brave enough to remove my mask and share that I was neurodivergent and autistic until my late 50s. I'm now, I'm now absolutely determined that, having faced a number of barriers in my career, as I approach the kind of later stages of my career, I want to remove those barriers for all colleagues in the industry or people who think about joining the industry that are neurodivergent, or have got partners or children that are neurodivergent. So that's my mission and why I'm here today. Back to you, Vic.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It's an interesting thing talking about that difficulty of coming forward and being able to unmask. I know that a few of us have had different journeys on that. Jen, would you like to talk a bit about what you drew, what neurodivergent group, here we go, what drew you to the industry and some of the ways that you felt you started your career there, especially talking about what it was like as a person neurodivergent starting out?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I thought about insurance industry from birth, like Johnny. I very much had the experience of finishing my master's degree in 2019, realising the PhD wasn't the avenue I wanted to pursue just yet, and typing in the words graduate scheme Norwich because I didn't want to move home to London yet. And thankfully, Marsh cropped up as the first year running their graduate scheme in Norwich. So I applied. It was meant to start in 2020. For some reason, that got delayed to 21. Can't remember why. But no, I joined remotely during the pandemic, and kind of from there, as I said, in the real estate specialty insurance broking practice, and kind of, started my journey with Marsh McLennan in the insurance industry, and realised very quickly that it was such a broad space and an industry of lateral moves that there was so many opportunities that I could explore. And I remember on my graduate scheme interview beforehand, I was doing research into the company because it was the first time I'd ever really understood, had to look into the insurance industry, and fell down the rabbit hole of the Marsh McLennan Global Risk Report and kind of started reading about the insurance background of the Titanic, and started info dumping about that in my interview. And instead of them asking me questions, I was asking them a bunch of questions, and they left more enthused about their jobs than anything else. And I was like, that's ADHD enthusiasm to a T. But it was, that was kind of what kept me around. And as I said, with Marsh McLennan, they really supported me in pursuing DEI. I was able to get involved on projects, and that kind of, as someone with ADHD, the ability to hop around and get involved in new things was a lifeblood, especially through CRG work as well. But that's kind of what kept me around.
Amazing, thank you. And it's an interesting thing that there was this, like you say, it's such a broad range of opportunities in the industry. A lot of them could be quite unusual. I know, Nalini, that for you, your role, you came into things through a bit more of a creative side of things, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe talk a bit about your journey.
So I was drawn to marketing by the promise of my day having lots of variety, never being 2 days, never being the same, and lots of opportunities to be really creative. So I've always been a daydreamer, and the role just happened to be in financial services. My misconception at the time was that's going to be so dull and it's going to be all about numbers, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I loved my time within the industry, and it's that opportunity to really get into the nitty-gritty of the detail, be really innovative, and come up with solutions to a problem. And I'm very curious naturally about other people and understanding what makes them tick. So it's given me that opportunity to meet with a variety of stakeholders and to really get into the mindset of my customers, the different segments, what makes them tick. So that's a bit like the cherry on the top that it's given me.
Amazing, thank you so much. Donna, now obviously you don't work in the industry itself, but you do a lot to help us in the industry. I'd love to hear about your journey, what brought you to advocacy about autism, what brought you to working so much with us. And I know that you are a loved one to neurodivergent people rather than neurodivergent yourself, but I'd still love to hear, because neurotypical people have a neurotype as well, some of the things that brought you into the role and why you love it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a psychology background, and I have a deep curiosity of people in general. So, and I think that what has ultimately driven me towards sector, which is all focused on social impact ultimately, and changing circumstances, the world, systems for individuals who maybe are not able to have, well, historically been able to be given the platform to do that themselves. You're right, I can't sit here and say I was drawn to the insurance industry. However, what I have done is over the last 7 to 8 years working within the charity sector. So I moved from the private sector into the charity sector, and let me tell you, if you want problem solving, like that's definitely a good place to be. And every day is different. It is very demanding, and there's obviously a lot of barriers for us to tackle. So I've moved into the charity sector because it's just very diverse. It's very interesting. But what I have been working on over in the last decade are large-scale corporate partnerships. So in previous roles, that's included a lot of financial services like HSBC and Barclays. And then within my role with Ambitious, Ambitious by Autism, I've been drawn to that because of autism, because of neurodiversity. Historically, I've worked on a lot of different programs about working with ethnic minority groups and upskilling, as well as I've worked on health disability projects and physical disabilities. And so this was really now about learning a lot more around neurodiversity and autism in particular. Our partnership with Marsh McLennan has been fantastic. So we worked with Marsh McLennan for the last 4 years, as well as been a founding member of GAIN. So it's been really great to see how inclusion is really coming to the forefront within insurance and investment industries in a way that I haven't seen that necessarily happen in a lot of other industries. And one of the main things to come out of our partnership with Marsh McLennan is an autism confidence framework, which is how we can work with employers to be more inclusive and to sort of change policies, practice, and make the world more inclusive for autistic and neurodiverse categories.
Amazing, that's fantastic, thank you. Nalini, I wonder if I can start with you next. We want to talk as much as we can about both the strengths and the challenges that we have as neurodivergent individuals, because we all have a mixture of both. I'd love to hear from you a bit about the barriers you faced in the workplace because of your neurotype, how you've overcome them, and even if you think any of those overlap with any strengths you have, and how you might like to talk about that.
Yeah, so with a late diagnosis, I guess you're used to, you've had a lifetime of picking yourself back up off the floor. And so you don't really understand why you don't fit in. So you become really resilient and determined. So all the knockbacks that I've had with these, you're very quiet in those meetings, you're not getting you need to have more presence, those kind of comments. You kind of pick yourself up really quickly and go on with that. And there's a steely determination to always find a solution. Failure is never an option. We are really determined. There's always a way. And we have so much empathy. Some of us are really good at reading people because we've learned to mimic behaviours and copy. So we know on projects exactly when we need to pivot. We fit in, we're adaptable because we've had to adapt. And we're naturally just, all that daydreaming and the hundreds and thousands of thoughts that are coming through. So you're sat in a meeting and you're trying to focus, not because the other person's boring you and they're asking you, they're saying, are you've not said anything, but you don't realise at the time that it takes you maybe 30 seconds longer to process that information. So by the time you got your thoughts together and you want to say something, the room's moved on. There's some of those barriers, and it's really frustrating when you're told you need to be more vocal at that meeting. It's like, well, I'm the most prepared person, so how about always having an agenda in advance so you know exactly what to read up on, and allowing people to come back to you after that meeting with their thoughts rather than at that table. But all these multitude of thoughts, that's big picture thinking. So we're your project managers, we can see the detail, visualize, join the dots, we bring people together, diverse teams, and we make things happen. So that's probably, we are your innovators. That's when we're at our best innovating, when we're lost in those thoughts. It's not a lack of focus, it's too much focus and having attention on everything that surrounds us. We're your competitive edge, I would say, for every organisation.
Amazing, thank you. Jen, I'd love to learn more about how you feel about that. You're feeling on the challenges you've faced, how you've overcome them, and how your strengths have helped you thrive in spite of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always see my ADHD traits as kind of inextricable when it comes to strengths and weaknesses. You know, it's kind of a question of harnessing. You know, and my energy and enthusiasm can mean that I can be a charismatic presenter or a really great asset on a project. But it also means that if I'm unsupported, I will burn out, I will leave things unfinished, I will struggle to follow through with all of my ideas. And that means that, you know, it's infrastructure, it's having people understand how I need to work and where I might be struggling. You know, I also have the thing of like pattern recognition. I can map a project, you know, a year in advance. I can foresee challenges that will happen and go all the way down in the weeds from the get-go. But heaven help anyone who needs me to do a high-level summary of the project, because that is borderline painful. You know, I've got a colleague where he now says, you know, it's so lovely seeing you go down to the weeds and then come back up, and he doesn't realise that he was the one that gave me the tools to do that. Sorry, to do that. He was the one that, you know, showed me how to summarise my ideas, and that was just frantically taking notes on how he was taking notes. And that's something, you know, even when it comes to in my current role, you know, anyone else with ADHD who pursued medication as an avenue will understand that there's an international shortage of a lot of types right now. So since March, I haven't had access to them. And that means that I have been feeling a little bit off kilter, a little bit out of sorts. And my manager has very kindly taken up the thing of, in our one-to-ones, making notes and summarising action points, because I physically can't seem to do that right now. And he's put that in place with all of our other colleagues because he just realised it was a really helpful way for him to, you know, track things. It's universal design in your accommodations. And when I first started my role with Marsh McLennan and, you know, started my journey of diagnosis, I was early on in my career. I was about, you know, 23 years old, and suddenly having to have conversations with people that I was trying to impress, trying to, you know, get my foot in the door with a career, and having to explain that, hey, can I remain remote working longer than the rest of my colleagues because I'm titrating on medication that has annihilated my appetite and I take 2 hours to eat a bowl of tomato soup. You know, there's conversations that people who are neurodiverse, especially with later in life diagnosis, have to navigate, that it's kind of an unknown. I'm still trying to understand my strengths and weaknesses with my ADHD. And, you know, it's definitely something where having people want to understand is amazing, but it's definitely not framing neurodiversity as we're not superheroes, it's not a super strength, because that's a damaging narrative. Because if you can only understand my neurodiversity through its positive impact in your team, that's going to inevitably hurt us when we do have the bad days or we do have the need to ask for an accommodation. But also, we're not a negative, we're not a drain on resource, we're not it's look at us as balanced individuals and navigate it as such.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I wonder, Johnny, I think you touched on it a little in an earlier question, and I don't think I've brought you up in a couple of questions because my own brain has been all over the place. I know that you also were diagnosed a bit later in life. I'd love to hear some of the challenges that you faced in the workplace, and, you know, maybe about how that changed before and after when you started looking at advocating for yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, Vic. But before I do that, I mean, Donna made a point about her experience ambitious about autism, that the insurance industry was pretty prominent in being neuro inclusive and promoting neuro inclusion. And actually, within GAIN, we've been working very closely with former MP Sir Robert Buckland, who basically delivered the government's autism and employment review. And we're now working with other parliamentarians, but particularly Sir Stephen Timms and Alison McGovern in the DWP, to make sure that the recommendations of the Buckland Review are implemented. Now, the insurance industry has been at the very forefront of developing those recommendations. So, you know, we are really leading the line in the UK on a cross-sectorial basis in terms of neuro inclusion, but we can't rest on our laurels. We've got more to do. But coming back to the point that you said, Vic, I mean, I spent my career being, pitching for jobs and being told over and over again, you're too quiet. You're not a natural salesperson. You're a technician. I always got pigeonholed into technical roles, predominantly underwriting and technical support. And invariably, I would be the guy that would be rolled out by salespeople to basically deliver training programs and presentations at a host of industry and key connection events. And invariably, the sales guys would write lots of business off the back of it, earn a lot of money, and get fast track promotion. And I was continually hitting glass ceilings. And I was lucky enough to be mentored in my career by a chap called Professor Marius Barnard, who invented critical illness insurance. Now, he was a cardiac surgeon with his brother, undertook the world's first human heart transplant, and he invented the concept of critical illness insurance as we know it today. And I in one of my mentoring sessions, I was kind of just sharing this with Marius, and he said, "Look, Johnny, I'm a pretty prominent transplant surgeon globally, got a reputation which has been hard earned. I would describe myself as being autistic. I recognise you as having autistic traits." This was before my formal diagnosis. But he said, "Let me just share this with you. That I've got 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth, and think about it for a minute. If you were on my operating table when I was carrying out a heart transplant, would you want me to be someone that was really into the detail, or would you want me to be someone who had advanced social skills? If you were on a plane across the Atlantic, would you want that pilot to be someone that was into the detail, or someone that had really great social skills?" So he said, so think about, that's the way that you think, you listen, you I guess make an assessment of your client's needs. You prescribe a solution, a course of treatment, then you review it. It said that, view that as your professional strength. And if you're getting making no progress within your own organization, shift to another. And I did that. And I went to strength to strength, and I did become that salesperson. I did become that leader of a sales force. I finally got to leadership positions. But I have to say, even as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, it was quite dangerous, I think, within a number of organizations, given their culture, to hold your hand up and say, "I'm autistic," because it could limit your career progression or even participation actually in your role, as we've seen from people like Charlotte Valeur, who was leading the IOD before she admitted that she was autistic and had to leave. So I think we have turned the corner. I have to apologise to everybody, and I should have been braver and out there way before I was. But I'm here now, and I'm quite happy to say, "I'm Johnny, I'm autistic, I'm Johnny, I've got a musculoskeletal disability." It doesn't define me, it's just who I am. I'm a better business leader, better chair for being that. I'm a better insurance professional for being that. That's me. Take me as I am.
That's amazing. Thank you. Donna, I know that in Ambitious About Autism, you do so much work to help people like us, to help the workplace we work in. We've heard a lot today about the ways that our strengths and our challenges can kind of go hand in hand, and how you can find the strengths in those challenges in different ways. I'd love to hear from you a bit more as well about, challenges in the workplace, how those can be overcome, how they can be strengths in themselves, and how you and Ambitious have been working to make this change. I know Johnny's talked about gain, but let's face it, we wouldn't be here if you also hadn't been on the journey with us.
Yeah. First of all, it's great to hear from Johnny, because I think there's so many different perspectives on where we are. I think myself personally, I think if I look back throughout my career, you can see that you've worked with people of all sorts of different neurotypes. And one of the things that we quite heavily focus on is the accessibility, the inclusivity of recruitment processes, of application processes, and really challenging our mental models of what makes a good colleague if we're interviewing or for a good role. And I've heard quite a few people talk about being in HR and those sorts of things. I think that's a real challenge, actually, sort of especially asking hiring managers to not be recruiting alike because of the personality that they see. Actually think, what are the skills that you need? What do you actually need? What does excellent look like? And that means that you don't always necessarily have to have somebody who looks or sounds or seems similar to yourself. Now, I guess some of my experiences of working with neurodiverse groups, but also leading neurodiversity and autism programs, is that there are so many strengths to bring people to the table. So initially, I think some of I listed three in my head just because otherwise I'll ramble. But the first is that, especially working with autistic talent, if you nurture the environment and provide the right environment where people can communicate, feel trusted, feel valued to speak up, you will get some of the best constructive criticism and challenges to make your business better, to make your processes run better, to make your team more productive, and that could result in impact on the bottom line, which we know is always going to be really important for a business. The second is providing new perspectives, which, and again, one of the strengths of having a neurodiverse group of individuals of all different types is that you will gain different insights and different perspectives, which allows you to tackle problems in maybe a fresh way. And then the third is that there can be that opportunity for hyper-focus. Now, in my experience, that has meant that yes, that you need to allow that time to think and to process and to reflect. And that's not only autistic people, there are different learning styles as well. But what I've really found is that means that activities can really be completed to the highest possible quality. And that is what we've really found through our Employee Autism programme, which is supporting autistic young people to get their foot on the ladder and to break down application processes, recruitment processes, in order for them to start within work. I answered that. I'm just trying to work out.
I think you answered it brilliantly, I think. No, it's fantastic. Thank you. In a moment, we're going to take some questions from the audience. So what I'd like to do is a last prepared question from me. I'm going to go in order. What's one tip you would give to someone about how they can model neuroinclusion in the workplace? And I'll start with you, Jeff.
Of course. I mean, the key thing would be educate yourself so that you can be an educator, and that can be applied to any role. Through our partnership with Ambitious About Autism, Marsh McLennan has put in place things like a lived experience advisory group to hear from colleagues, to get that kind of feedback, that honest feedback, to help create a more inclusive workplace. We've had an Employee Autism program to bring in 22 autistic individuals in placements with a 50% higher rate from that, which means, we have those individuals there to work with and keep working with. And, my current manager is a global DEI leader and still acknowledges that he wants to understand more, because no two neurodiverse people are the same. My ADHD is going to be wildly different to Nalini's, it's going to be wildly different to Vic's, it's going to be, it's its own thing. So understanding, that's why the session is called Neurodiversity in Practice, not Neurodiversity Best Practice, because it's the application of the sort of techniques that you can use to support your colleagues. And that's something where we're going to be sharing a QR code further on, and there's also pages out in the audience for anyone in the room with a QR code to a report Marsh McLennan have done with Ambitious About Autism, again, just for that knowledge share. And there are so many resources that you can, sorry, got a cold coming on, through GAIN, through Ambitious About Autism. So just, educate yourselves so that you can pass it on to your colleagues and call out any kind of, any phobic language that you hear. That's something that it's to have an inclusive workplace, to be able to have that education mean something. It starts with allyship. So look into that as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Nalini, please, I'd love to hear from you on this as well.
Okay, so awareness raising is great. And I think that we have we've been raising lots of awareness over the last couple of years in particular. So assuming that's been raised, I'd encourage upskilling in the workplace and looking at your people policies and processes, starting with performance appraisals. Stop and think, how do you judge people? How do you define and measure what does successful performance look like? It's based on neurotypical norms. So you're only going to see how different we are and how far we deviate from standardized definitions and standard measures. So the chances are you're going to be penalising some of the common autistic behaviours, like not being a team player, maybe a lack of eye contact, not contributing to meetings, being quiet. So you're missing the strengths, and companies should be encouraging all of this neuro inclusion, not because it's a legal requirement and not because it's the right thing to do, but because we are your competitive advantage. You know, look to retain us and really kind of look at that in plain sight. You've got your existing talent, tap into those who perhaps, you know, are in the environment that's not allowing them to shine.
Amazing. Donna, I'll ask you next.
I'm just going to frame it initially because I think there was a couple of key barriers that maybe I didn't mention. What we've really found working with autistic young people going into the workplace is that one of the main barriers is around asking for and implementing reasonable adjustments or accommodations within the workplace. The second is around those unwritten social rules and not knowing how to be in certain environments. And so, like, with that in mind, if you were to leave anything from me today, it would be that reminder that what works for autistic people will benefit everyone. So reviewing policies and procedures will benefit everybody if you are able to apply an inclusive lens to them. And being sort of someone here talking about autism confidence and our employee autism programme, my one tip would be around recruitment processes and looking at how can you remove sort of actually how to communicate literally, clearly, and to remove any of those sort of unwritten assumptions that we naturally build into the recruitment process. Because ultimately things like providing interview questions ahead will really enable neurodiverse candidates to be able to bring their best selves to those interviews and ultimately tap into all those strengths that we've been talking about there.
Fantastic, thank you. And Johnny, last but not least, what's your top tip?
Well, thank you, Vic. I'd ask everybody who's listening and watching right now, just look around the room. You know, cognitive diversity matters. You know, we are all thinking differently, bringing something fresh to our propositions gives you competitive advantage. We would lose that if we all looked and thought the same, wouldn't we? So in terms of EDI and in terms of neuro inclusion, what we're fundamentally talking about is belonging in insurance, and that speaks to, you know, our attitudes, our ethics, our behaviours, and our culture, both individually and corporately. And you know, and Donna was absolutely spot on, actually, because if you look at some of the adjustments, as they're known in the UK, you know, or accommodations as they're known in the US, to really support people that are neurodivergent, by and large, we're saying, look, you know, I would really like a part of the office to work in that's quiet, where I don't have to listen to other people eating. I don't have to smell the smells of food. I can maybe the ability to work flexibly if I can. I would like access to a part of the office that's got natural daylight. I'd like a part of the office, please, that doesn't have brash colours and busy things on the walls. Now, those are drop curbs because, you know, those are the things that work, that make environments more friendly and effective and accommodating for neurodivergent people. But it's the very same, you know, those environments also help people that have maybe got hearing issues, that have maybe got sight issues. And from work that I've done with women in insurance, it certainly helps women that are perimenopausal and menopausal too. So you know, if you get it right for neurodivergent people, you get it right, as Donna said, for a whole range of people in your organisation, and not just your colleagues, your customers as well.
That's amazing. Thank you, Johnny. Now, I wonder if we have some time to get some questions from our audience.
So we do. We've Slido. Thank you very much for the Slido questions. They've been great. Some clear themes emerging. One of them was started off by Johnny. Johnny, you mentioned dropping the mask. On the subject of disclosure, when's the right time to disclose? What made you drop the mask? How can managers help people?
Well, what made me drop the mask? This really happened when I had the Cabinet Office disability role, and I was out there talking to colleagues about, you know, what were the barriers that they were facing. These were people entering the industry as apprentices, as grads, as, you know, as late returners, and around about that time, actually, my son was diagnosed as having ADHD. It's actually his ADHD diagnosis led to my autistic diagnosis. And I thought, I need to be, and I'd been out talking because of my disability. I've been talking to industry leaders for years about the industry being inclusive and being more diverse, and the issue of reasonable adjustments always came up, and the cost of those adjustments. And invariably, when I was looking around, at the various leaders groups I was talking to, a lot of those, there was not a lot of diversity at that point. A lot of them were male and stale white people like me. But I didn't see that many people that had physical disabilities, let alone non-visible disabilities. But people were presenting, reasonable adjustments, they're extremely expensive. And I'd say, well, tell me, guys, what do you think a reasonable adjustment costs? Over £1,000. What do you think a reasonable adjustment would be? Didn't get an answer. Well, in actual fact, the cost of a reasonable adjustment in the British workplace is about £35. Neither here nor there. And for neurodivergent people, the cost of reasonable adjustment is zip in most of the instances. And in actual fact, as I mentioned in my previous comments, will give you far greater, will make you far more accommodating as a business from a wider range of colleagues as well as customers. Now, so what made me mask? The fact that I realised that if I didn't do this, no one was going to do this, and it needed to be done. And frankly, I was near the end of my career with Lloyds Bank Group and Scottish Widows. And do you know what? If they were going to get rid of me, they were going to get rid of me. I had nothing really to lose. So I thought, right, I will stand up and make a stand. And thankfully, people like Laurie and Barbara and Vic and others rallied round, and it gave rise to GAIN. And what started off as a few of us has now become a movement in insurance. And the insurance industry is now leading on this issue across all sectors of the UK economy. It's a good place to be, but we've got more to do.
Amazing, thank you. I'll open up if anybody else would also like to respond.
I was going to say, with women particularly, we're seeing lots of late diagnosis. So the chances are many of us could be neurodivergent without actually realising it. And so when we look at universal design and just thinking more about our cognitive differences, diversity, it takes away the need then to have to ask for reasonable adjustments in the first place. So it's thinking, how do we embrace difference?
Yeah. Amazing.
I mean, for me, masking, you're always masking to some degree in the workplace, but in terms of transparency and disclosure around my neurodiversity, it was never an option not to. I kind of was very much raised in a household where you can be upfront and honest about who you are, and that extends to, my sexuality as an openly bisexual woman. And when I received my ADHD diagnosis, it just felt like I had another patch to put on the, metaphorical denim jacket. Like, cool, that's another one. That sounds fine. Let's keep moving. And it's also, I don't have the energy to have the mask up all the way and to hide my neurodiversity. If somebody has a problem with that, I'm going to put the energy on them. They're the one that's going to have to navigate my neurodiversity. I can just be myself. And I'm fortunate that I have colleagues and have done from my diagnosis during my time with my old team, where yes, you feel some, well-intentioned but slightly poorly phrased questions. Yes, you navigate imposter syndrome. I know that for a lot of later diagnosed individuals, you have an existential crisis where you feel like 3 diagnostic traits in a trench coat, where you realize what's my personality, what's my, neurodiversity, and how those are kind of inextricable from one another. They don't have to be separated out. And masking, I know that when it comes to the end of a long day, if I've been on certain calls where they're external facing, I might have masked a little bit more than normal. And I just have to lie on the floor for a minute. It's called floor time. It's recommended by therapists and osteopaths alike. It's great, fully recommend. It's a grounding technique. For some people, that looks like taking off makeup or, the train ride home, listening to specific kinds of music. There are transition periods where you have to remove the mask. But I would always recommend, if anyone feels like they are in a safe enough space to have the mask at least a little bit down, like kind of masquerade ball, very chic looking, have it half there if you have to have it. If you don't, have it all the way down. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a team where I can, and they just deal with me being a motor mouth and talking like a machine gun. Great.
Yeah, I think that's important actually, because they're talking to psychiatrists, and a number of of them have commented that when diagnosis on women in later life, invariably following diagnosis of their children receive, a lot of those women actually have previously been misdiagnosed as having anxiety. And anxiety basically does happen if you're continually having to mask. So if that's you, have a think about it. Certainly, having a diagnosis made me feel a lot more confident in my own skin. I kind of understood myself. I'm cool with that. And that in itself gives you more confidence. There are some tricks as well, the hacks, if you like. So for a long time, actually, one of my coping strategies, as Professor Marispan had said to me, he said, why don't you just wear some glasses with plain glass in them? So when you put them on, that's you being business you. But when you take them off, that's you just being you personal you. And so that was kind of glasses on, I'm masking, glasses off, I wasn't. And I'm wearing glasses now, by the way, just because I'm old and I need them. But I don't know if Mary's just said that to make me feel good, but it certainly helped me. But I think the other thing that came from thinking about my relationship with him was that I think having an understanding coach and mentor helps. So if you are that, and I coach and mentor people now, I would urge you, if you are neurodivergent and you're feeling confident within yourself and you're confident in your workplace, do reach out to help other colleagues.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay. I was just going to say, along the employer side of that, it is about being person-centred, bringing empathy to work, and as a line manager, trying to create those open communication channels, and really enabling people to try and be themselves at work. So I do think that there's that cultural side from an employer and an organisation as well, and to try and make sure that all of these things are in place. And just to echo what Johnny had said, reasonable adjustments, these are not things that have to cost the earth. And there are so many people that have adjustments of some kind, be that around caring responsibilities or working hours, or we are now in a more flexible world in terms of hybrid working. And so I guess it's just that plea to really consider actually those really small and minor adjustments that you can put in place to really enable inclusion.
And just adds to that, it benefits everyone, not just the person that you've made the adjustment for.
Absolutely. Just to kind of very quickly echo what Johnny said about late diagnosis. When I received my diagnosis, prior to that, I'd been diagnosed with anxiety, with depression, with IBS, in terms of there is a physical impact from sustaining a mask and, feeling like you're constantly if anyone's ever had a desk that is just completely cluttered with everything, I don't think I've ever in my life had a desk that is not covered in everything all at once. And that's what my brain was like as well. And when I received my diagnosis, suddenly all of these other diagnoses were more of a symptom of unmanaged, unsupported, undiagnosed ADHD and autism. And now that I have that diagnosis and that language, I do consider my ADHD a disability, because the language of disability is something that's been so supportive and welcoming in the community that I've been able to step into because of, my diagnosis has been a really incredibly supportive space. I know not all neurodiverse individuals consider their neurodiversity to be a disability, but it's something where that's something that I found a comfort in, because it's something meant that I don't consider myself to be an anxious individual anymore. I pick because it's fun. I've got a friendship bracelet that I've been messing with this whole session because I've got my fidget spinner at home, but there is definitely something to be said for a diagnosis. And if you do feel like anything that we said today might be, ringing alarm bells, reach out to, if you've got providers at your company or just friends, and also through LinkedIn with us, there are resources to help kind of pursue that later in life. And if you're already diagnosed and you just want to connect, that is also an option.
Absolutely, thank you.
That's a good segue. I get to try, because unfortunately we're coming right to the end. We need to do our learning objectives. One of the things in the Q&A has been how do I explain to my manager and get a little bit of support with my manager? I'm being told I'm too emotional. How do I do that? How do I get more support in the workplace? Not how do I give it, but how do I get it? We do have some resources at the end to pass to everyone. I would say again, is a superb point of contact. LinkedIn, as Jen says, please do. We don't have time, unfortunately, to tackle that one today.
I personally, I'd be really happy to receive any unanswered questions by email. I'd be happy to do a reply with some responses. I don't want to voluntold everyone else, but
Happy to do.
yeah. So we can make sure we cover some of those that we weren't able to get to. It's the beauty of a neurodivergent conversation. We might not answer just the one question you asked, but the 5 others hidden behind it as well. So, as to say, through this session, hopefully you'll all feel that you can now describe some of the barriers that neurodivergent individuals experience in the workplace, identify approaches to overcoming those barriers, either for yourself or to support others, and specify an action that you will take to improve neurodiversity inclusion in your organisation. Thank you, everyone. And please.
Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you everyone listening and watching and in the room. We do have a feedback for today's event. If you would be so kind, that'd be wonderful. There's a QR code. I'll keep that up in a second. Just before everyone leaves their screens, some links there for you. Thank you.